The artistic quality is such that it comes to the heart of what music actually does. And when things are written to music, poetic phrases that stay with us and that mean something, they just become a powerful part of the devotional life, how we pray, how we think about things, and that sort of artistic beauty brings a unique nourishment to the soul. And so you study the scriptures and study the songs that come from the scriptures just to help nourish the soul, the family, and a congregation.
Keith and Kristyn Getty are award-winning hymn writers who co-founded the Getty Music Organization. In partnership with Crossway, Keith and Kristyn worked with their team to create the Sing Hymnal, which features nearly 500 of the best Christian hymns, past and present, specially curated and organized by the Getty Music Team. Keith, Kristyn, thanks so much for joining me today on the Crossway podcast.
Thank you
Pleasure
so
to be here,
much.
Matt. Thank you.
So I think it's fair to say that this hymnal project that Getty Music and Crossway have been working on for a few years now, well, I came into this thinking about all the adjectives I could use to describe this project. But then I thought it might be more interesting to hear how you would describe the project. So as you think about, what are the words that immediately come to mind when you think about this hymnal project? Keith, do you want to start?
I'm still exciting. Some days it's exhausting and some days it's overwhelming just because it's certainly, I've never done anything like it. But it is extraordinarily exciting because it's a chance for everyone out there who is a pastor or an elder or a leader of a group or a worship leader or a parent or a grandparent to actually have something in their hands that can help shape the future of those that they care for most, their families, their friendships, their congregation. So many of my spiritual heroes talked about the Bible and then the hymn book being the two things that help shape their minds, their emotions, their prayer lives, and by extension, then their actions and their reactions and their witness and their legacy. And so it's an overwhelming project. And there have been some very dark nights of the soul in the process because we've realized the weight of it, but the potential of it, and indeed, our own weaknesses in that process. So.
Kristyn, how do you feel about it as you've kind of reflect back on what it's been like so far?
Well, I think there's a sense of excitement, yes, and relief at getting to this point. That the hymnal's been something that Keith has talked about for years, and as he said, he was so impacted in terms of his vision for hymn writing initially through growing up with hymnals and sort of navigating the church's year, the life of the church, what it means to be a believer through the songs that he sings, and me to a certain extent as well. So I've just been excited to see this moment finally come, and it's, as a songwriter, it has been exciting being able to go through and collect songs together as we've both been together championing hymns, traditional and modern, for a long time. And so it's good to work towards a single source at this point of time that's sort of gathering all that work together. And it's also provided an impetus to keep writing, you know, because where do you stop a hymnal? Well, you just have to stop and you have to press print. But it just opens up a whole new, era of just, I want to write this and do this. And so it's exciting just being able to see that collection come together, and just we're hoping that these songs go into people's lives in deep and varied ways.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about the song selection process. How do you pick which songs to include and how are they organized? We'll get to that. But I think over the past couple of years, we've probably spent countless hours, both the Getty Music Team and the Crossway team, and then collaborating together in person and on videos and phone calls, hours and hours working together on this project. And I could imagine some people might think, Crossway and Getty Music are putting out a hymnal and they just kind of slap the Getty Music name on that thing and just put it out. But it's really been an incredible labor of love for you both in particular.
Yeah, everybody has sweated this out.
Yeah, and you both have been very intimately involved in virtually every detail of this project.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, again, the first thing I would say is I think Chris and I both feel a sense of both joy in the people that we share life with, as well as a fairly realistic inadequacy. I think we know what we can do, to the point that most of what is required for a hymn requires a team effort. And so, working through all of the hymns, coming through, prayers of the historic prayers of spiritual giants throughout Christian history that can help us all pray better. Well, we cover all 20 centuries of Christian history are represented in this, and so even just to go through even just to use the prayers as an opportunity for personal devotion or family devotion, or to use in your churches, it's one, you realize that what it is to be the Church of God, that we're standing in the shoulders of so many generations of extraordinary people and getting to utilize their skills and their work and hopefully make them available to a new generation. So I think that at one level from those who've gone before us. But I think also our generation, the great hymnals throughout history, certainly all of history, always do one or two things. And that is, number one, they always come at a point in history where there has been a new canon of hymns written that are worthy of having global understanding. And I think what the last 25 years of the modern hymn thing that we've been involved in has done has created this incredible canon of songs.
It's a flourishing.
And then, but I think the second thing most of the hymnals do is they basically just help us recalibrate. How does the great work of history, the creative work of history, how can we reapply that for today? So hymns from All Creatures of Our God and King to Hark the Herald Angels Sing, we don't sing the original versions. We sang the version that a hymnal editor said at one point, to make this work for the next generation, George Whitefield had to rewrite Hark the Herald Angels Sing. All Creatures of Our God and King that started off from St. Francis of Assisi has had multiple versions that have come down the line.
A lot of people's minds just got blown. They didn't know that.
And
There's a bit of editing required then.
And so that's the two things that great hymnals, and I think this hymnal has tried to do that. We've, every artistic opinion is just an opinion. Do you know what I mean? We and our team have tried to say what are the most helpful, and then I think the three sections I find most helpful, because one is the entire church service, one is the entire Christian life from childhood to death, and then the entire life of Christ, the entire church's year.
This is the kind of the division of the
three
hymnal.
divisions.
Yep.
And so I think that also
He thinks in threes, so it was very pleasing.
that also helps us.
happened.
That also helps us so much, because you get the hymns, you get the beautiful readings from the ESV, you get the great prayers from Christian history, and even some readings or liturgies that are just so beautifully written by craftsmen who were far more able than we were. So.
But wouldn't you say, Keith, though, that it has been interesting just looking at the whole project, just the varied tasks that all come together to make a hymnal? I mean, the conversations of the weightedness of the paper, how the music was going to be notated, the proofreaders, the editing, all the little stories, the covers, the colours.
An engraver is the person who's actually putting the notes on the page, so to speak.
I remember
the art form of the hymnal.
I remember one of those days. I remember one of those days where at Crossway, all your gang were in and all our gang were in, and we're having all these different meetings and breakfast meetings and lunch meetings and all that kind of stuff. At the end of it, John Martin goes, I'm not sure I've ever been with this many nerds in one day. Do you know what I mean? Because everybody was obsessed with the weight of paper, with the choice of a word. I was talking to someone today about the writing of By Faith, the hymn we wrote back in 2009, and Stuart and Kristyn, she'll not mind me saying that they couldn't agree on the chorus, and I trust both of them in the lyric. And in the end, the CD missed its deadline for distribution. Oh. It had to go back, and in the end,
because you couldn't land the plane on this.
Yeah, and then one day in Boston, I actually had to make the call, and the fourth line of the chorus, Stuart was the one that Stuart would not bend on, and that was to have the fourth line of the chorus to be, "We walk by faith and not by sight." Kristyn we had originally thought it should be "By faith we walk and not by sight," because the song is by faith. But he said the two key musical lines, "We walk by faith," meant it needed to be there. And it just, to us, because we'd lived with the song for 6 months, it felt counterintuitive. And he pushed in that. So we then took Kristyn's line 2, which was much warmer, and "We will fix our eyes on him, our soul's reward." That kind of warmth that she had. His line 2 was really sticky. And then we took his line 3, and it was like, I had to decide. And I said to Kristyn, "Are you happy?" I said to Stuart, "Are you happy?" And he goes, "I'm glad it's done, if that's what you mean." And I was like, but it was like, that was a month of going backwards and forwards on about a few words, but they actually did make a difference,
So the hymnal represents
And so
thousands of those conversations.
That is tens of thousands of those conversations. When you think about the translation of "All my hope in God is founded, He doth still my trust renew," that's the translation by the English poet laureate to King George V, father of King George VI. And so these are the finest poets in human history who have poured their brilliance into these things. So it is interesting.
So you all know this. We live in this world of streaming audio, of big screens and slick church services where things are projected up there. So I think one possible response to the idea of the Gettys and Crossway are putting out a physical hymnal is like, why that? Do people use hymnals? Why does that fit today? How do you think about that?
Sure, and it's a great question. And I think in some ways there's parallels to why do we own a Bible? Do you know what I mean? And but I think with the hymnal, it does a whole number of things. The number one thing, and I think if we can begin a conversation over the next 5 years about church leaders curating what they sing, that alone will be a life-changing ministry for the global church. So the curation is the number one thing. Having a collection of hymns that we say, we believe these are helpful and healthy and holy for our church. And if the people have these and they own a copy, and they can read it, it helps them remember and recall and carry them. Our grandparents all had hymn books by their bedside because most nights you should read your Bible, but you know what? Some nights you're not in the mood. And some nights actually just reading beautiful hymns and thinking about the melodies can actually do the same thing if it is a good collection.
And it's a reminder of the care over the things that we sing. And as you mentioned, the leadership being sort of a custodian of the songs that the congregation sings across the generations, the actual physicality of a book and collection is a constant reminder that we care about this, and we're taking the whole church on a journey through the various different themes and parts of it. And I'd also say, just as a mother and leaning into that idea of the hymnal in the home, that it's not just for public worship and the big gathering, but it's for family worship and for times in the home. I even think it's for music education in the home. And both of us, I learnt how to sing by singing the songs of the church. Keith, a lot of his first music was in the church. That's where we learned. So we're hopeful that with the music notation and the lyrics, that it encourages the next generation to apply their musical skills towards the songs of the church. And that becomes a part of family life.
Yeah, and that's such a huge emphasis that you all have had since the very beginning of this project, is that although you want this to be used by pastors and churches in corporate worship, and that's a wonderful application, there's so much more that this hymnal could be for families and for individuals, for family worship. And like you said, Keith, something that you could live on your nightstand and be a resource of theological reflection and meditation far beyond just what you say.
And the artistic quality is such that it comes to the heart of what music actually does. And when things are written to music, with the cadence of a phrase, the rhyme, the meter, all these things, they don't just aid memorization, which is incredibly important. We're trying to distill great truths into poetic phrases that stay with us and that mean something, but they're just become a powerful part of the devotional life, how we pray, how we think about things, and that sort of artistic beauty brings a unique nourishment to the soul. And so you study the scriptures and study the songs that come from the scriptures just to help nourish the soul, the family, and a congregation.
So you two co-founded Getty Music with, quote, a view to the year 2050 in the hope that individuals, families, and churches would celebrate the beauty of Christ-centered hymnody. So as you think about that vision that you had for the Getty Music organization, how does this particular resource, this hymnal, fit into that ambition?
Sure. I think it's really just to help people know God and make him known. That's what we all live for. And our corner is being able to help sing deeply, because that is so much of how we know God, and then in turn we'll make him known. And in 2000, when we started this, we actually thought we were at a crisis. I still believe the global church was actually at a singing crisis. And so, I think where the hymnal fits in, it's really in some ways it's a halftime report on how we're doing. Do you know what I mean? It's time for the halftime, music break, so to speak. And 25 years ago, my problem was when I was wanting to do a Bible study or have people around to the house and sing songs, or was asked to lead an evening service, there only was two really good, and they wanted modern songs. There only was two really good modern songs. There was about 12 that were okay, and they weren't great, and they weren't that deep, but they weren't wrong.
Was the thing.
And they weren't going to, you knew they didn't compare to hymns, but there was two that compared to hymns, and so we thought if we could somehow contribute to that. The start, it was just about writing a few great hymns to have. And I think people growing up now in their 20s, teens, 20s and 30s don't realize that 25 years ago we just didn't have it. And so they now have in all of those churches modern songs that are rich and good to sing.
Yeah.
And so that has been kind of the initial part of the battle in some ways. I think the battle now shifts because now that we have those songs, we want people to have the big issue is actually curation now, because at multiple levels, you've over 300,000 songs available in CCLI alone. You've every young church musician wanting to be a superstar and write their own songs, no matter how bad they are, and put their congregation through the absolute torture of having to sing their songs. Do you know what I mean? And we need to clamp down and say, okay, say, throughout all Christian history, Christian leaders, whether that is parents, whether it is pastors, whether it is denominational and movement leaders, whether it is worship leaders, they have led what their congregation sings and determined that. And there are too many pastors especially, but parents as well, who are just washing their hands of the duty that this is. And so I think we really felt this is the next big frontier in terms of helping primarily pastors, but also parents and leaders do that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. The hymnal includes nearly 500 songs, which sounds like a lot, but then when you start to think about it, you think about the 300,000 that are out there, and any Google search could turn up so many. It really isn't that many songs. And you think about the physical limitations even of a hymnal.
Yeah.
So how did you choose which hymns would be included in this? Summarize that in one paragraph.
And it's a sort of an unfinished job in your head sometimes.
Yeah. You know, it's just an artistic opinion, and obviously it was written for our context here. So if I was living in Paris, France, if I was living in Italy, if I was living in Buenos Aires or Singapore, I would have made different choices, to be very clear. But the context primarily was, this is primarily for the American churchgoer and the English-speaking churchgoer, secondarily, and then thirdly, if others happened to think it suited them, they could use it. So first of all, it is contextual. And so we basically went for what are the songs that, the primary thing was, what are the songs that we think we could grow old with? So over 2/3 of the hymns are old hymns that have proved the test of time. But we also wanted to be relevant to our generation and have that sort of fresh vibrancy that singing of our generation does. And so with those ones, we went for songs that, again, we felt had that beauty and richness that is just great to sing, that we thought we could keep on singing. And again, it's conjecture, and obviously we're much closer to all the songs that we and our team and our friends write. So that's just part of it. That's the same for every hymnal editor. But trying to find the ones that we thought would be, beautiful and rich. I mean, someone said to me yesterday, songs should be sound and singable. And I said, that's the most horrible description I ever heard for a hymn. That's not how you should ever think of it. If you're out there and you're thinking about songs for Sunday or songs that your kids should know, you want to have songs that you can't wait to sing. Just ask yourself that question. Is this song a song I can't wait to sing this Sunday? Then sing it. If you're apathetic about it, don't do it. Don't do it, because we're made in God's image. We're made to love the food that we eat, the music that we sing and listen to, the homes that we live in, the gardens that we walk through, the beauty of nature, the places that we go. That is how we are made. And so the songs we sing have to be absolutely beautiful about the Lord, rich in his beauty, but beautiful about the Lord, and then from that, obviously, they should be sound and singable, but we're presuming that.
Yeah.
But it's a much, much higher goal.
It's a higher goal.
And also wider, because that's sometimes maybe this last generation or two, we have tended to sing more narrowly about the Lord and about the subjects we could be singing about. And I think a hymnal provides an opportunity. You look at a contents page of any hymnal, and suddenly you're in a different world of songs about this.
Songs of lament.
Yeah. And so you start to find places for these songs which sort of just help fill up the church's year and give a healthy diet to the singing of the church, which in turn then shapes your mind, your thoughts, your prayers, your evangelism, your mission, your time with your kids. It all sort of flows that same way. Yeah. If you're not singing about it, it's probably not a priority. Yeah. And so the hymnal allows you to explore a much wider sense of what we are called to do and be and think as God's people.
It strikes me that it just can cultivate an intentionality in the pastor and the parent's life as they think about the songs that they are feeding to their children.
And brings more interest as well. There's so much to sing about. There's so many things. Why shouldn't we sing about them?
Get out of the ruts that we maybe already are in. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the Hymnal Advisory Committee. What was the purpose of this group?
That was an extension of really friendships over the years. I mean, that was Johnny and I and the gang put that together. And I mean, Johnny McCabe goes back to working with me. We've worked there since 1999. And he came over with us. And when we first came to America, nobody was really into it. Certainly Christian music thought it was weird. And so we just had to go church by church, denomination by denomination, leader by leader, seminary by seminary, and introduce this idea of hymns. But along the way, we just met some of the most fantastic people.
And kindred spirits who felt the same things.
So we said to them all, look, would you be available? Would you be available for us to write to every couple of weeks? Give us your feedback when you've time. If you want a private phone call, we'll sit and have a private phone call with you and chat. And we'll do occasional group green times. And then we'll all get together at the end. We'll give you all tickets. We're buying them all we're having a big party with them all on the Wednesday afternoon, a big dinner, and giving them all
At
free
the same
passes for them and
conference.
all their wives, and they all get free passes to the conference and free copies of the book, and so it's just
It was a safeguard too, because they represent different parts of the country, different parts of
and
the
they all have
world,
different
different stages of life.
They all have different opinions. Why are you doing laments? Why is there not? Why are you doing? Why have you got songs that are like lamentish? Why is there not enough laments? And they're all different opinions.
Was it hard to navigate some of that feedback?
Well, I don't. I mean, I don't look at it like that. These are interesting and different questions. You just got to work it out. I don't think any of the guys are expecting us to please them.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? They're not those
Somebody
kind of
has
people.
to be the editor.
Yeah. So
they know that that's your role.
Yeah. And so, but it is.
But we've
it was great.
appreciated their input, and it's not just one-off things, as Keith said. It does represent several decades of friendship and people speaking into what we do, and so we wanted to share it. It was a safeguard, it was a help, it was a constant inspiration. It created the right itches in different places, and
And I think hymnals can. I think the great thing about the hymnal has been, we have had a boss in Crossway. We've had a fantastic team around us of close advisors. All the speakers at the Sing Conference spoke in one way or another. We used to a lot of the modern prayers are by John Piper, Alistair Begg, Tim Keller, some of these wonderful guys who have spoken in so much to this whole thing, and Johnny Tyler, Don Carson, the list goes on. But we've also had this larger crowd of people just all speaking up their opinions. But at the same time, we've had the role to drive. So many people I know who've had to do hymnals have been like the chair of a committee where they have to meet every month for 4 years, and every decision has to be voted on. And everybody's between meetings like trying to canvass votes. And it's just like, so
It's got political, huh?
Yeah. But that's not been the nature of this. We were trusted to lead it, but we had accountability above us, we had accountability beside us, and we had a team around us and I guess below us in some ways who all were in touch and were pretty opinionated.
Yeah. I can just speak to the level of trust and confidence that Crossway had in you and your team, and respect for this isn't just an idea you had yesterday. This is the extension of decades of faithful ministry and songwriting. And so
it's a deep ongoing appreciation to Crossway for partnering with us in this project and caring so much about every little detail and sharing the vision with us and filling in all the gaps of things that we couldn't even imagine and how you put a hymnal together. The community of that, and it's just so deeply appreciated, and we're just excited to see all those efforts coming together. Fruition.
So the hymnal is organized, as you already said, into 3 sections: the worship service, the Christian life, and the life of Christ.
Yeah.
What was the vision behind that? Why organize the hymnal in that way, not just alphabetically, say? Or what was behind that?
Well, liturgy matters at every level. And when I say that, how we order our services. Martin Luther's Reformation might not have been called the Reformation if he hadn't have decided at the core of everything, we have to reform the liturgy, reform the order of what we do when we gather together. We had to bring singing back. We had to shape a service with the gospel. We had to read God's word. We had to preach God's word. And the elements had to point to the greatness of God, redefining what communion services were. And so that is as old as, one could argue, the Reformation. One could argue it's as old as Christianity itself. That what he recognized from the church fathers was that the ordering of our services is so crucial to how we think. There's a famous story told about a church potluck occasion where the pastor was walking around and all the kids were missing, and one little boy who was a show-off comes running towards the pastor in front of all the young girls and says, "Pastor, why do you always say the grass withers, the flowers fade, but the word of the Lord stands forever?" And the pastor pauses and says, "That's why," and walks away. In other words, the things that we say, the things that we repeat, the things that we emphasize, the things that we care about, and the order in which they're done affect every part of the Christian life outside of that. Sunday worship affects daily devotional, affects daily life. It's just an easy thing. So we wanted the book to have that sense of order that could affect how we think about our Sunday worship, how we think about the journey of the Christian life, and ultimately how we see it demonstrated in Jesus' life.
Yeah.
And so the songs, the readings, the prayers and liturgies all tie into that.
Yeah, there's a structure and intentionality. Contrasting that and all the thought that's gone into what's being sung, when, for what occasions, is so different than the way that when I open up my Apple Music, it's often just, well, it's usually Getty Music, but it's often just kind of a random,
like... Don't repeat that.
But it can be random, right? We can just turn on the radio function where it just sort of picks a song and it sort of starts to create a playlist that's random. And I think that's so often the way that we think about these things, but there's a rich intentionality behind what you guys have done. So another thing that the hymnal includes, which is really interesting and really fun, is all these stories behind the hymns. And it's just this incredible collection for every hymn, correct? Every hymn has a little short anecdote or history of the hymn itself. And what was the purpose of including that in this hymnal?
I think learning the story behind everything, I think, is particularly relevant to our age. But actually, it's as old as life itself. You know, Jesus told things in stories. And when it comes to helping people understand why we sing deeper songs, there is work to be done. So that's the first thing. Kristyn always tells the story of, we used to go to this restaurant when we were with Alistair in Ohio. We used to go to this basement restaurant in Hudson, and they did, what was it they did? It was some kind of fish.
It was clams,
I think it was some kind of fish that they wrapped in bacon that was just, but he actually showed me how he made it and what he did with it. And it was, by the time I got it, you know, he explained why this food was amazing and showed you all the ingredients and explained what each of the colors, what each of the flavors, there was a tart flavor with this, there was a more sweet, rich flavor with this, and this is how this combines. By the time I got it, I loved it. And it taught me a lot then about the way to teach people to be excited about something. So part of it was getting people excited about why the songs exist and get them to love them. Because we love them, they should love them, and so that's the hope. The second thing is it helps worship leaders and pastors to have something to make it more deeply relevant when they lead it. But thirdly, a lot of them stories are actually just telling the gospel. So we hope that this hymnal, part of the use of this hymnal will be pew hymnals. And so as it is used in pews, people will read it, kids will read it who are not Christians, and they'll just be getting 1,000 different ways to understand the beauty of the gospel and how it changes every part of life. And so that's the hope.
And back to the original point, how do you pick which songs go in? That process of writing those stories would confirm in your mind and heart that this needs to be in this hymnal. You know, why is this critical? If there's only 500 spots, why does this one need to be here? And so that also helped determine which we're in. You know, what story is good to tell? What are the lines? You know, what's the reason for this song? So that also served that process.
So this hymnal right now is releasing with a number of different editions. So there's going to be a black hardcover and a green hardcover and a
I insisted on
leather.
the green to represent Ireland's beautiful green
Irish
grass.
And Rory McIlroy winning the Masters last week. I think it needs to be mentioned again.
There's an accompaniment edition. There's an online interface where people can purchase music and browse the hymns in that kind of a context. Also want to mention We Sing, Kristyn, your new picture book for kids that has just come out as well. Just wonder briefly if you could just explain, how does that kind of connect in with this whole hymnal project?
Well, there is a little section in the hymnal that's for family worship, and we're just excited about that. There's a short little section to sort of get that going. Obviously, all the hymns can be used for families, but one in particular that was helpful for that. And as we sat back and we thought, we have 4 little girls, and thinking through the songwriting process, the songs we sing, how services are put together, the kids have really challenged us, and we've cared deeply. What does it mean for our families? And so we were just thinking different ways that we could encourage families and children in particular to think biblically and beautifully about singing. And one of the ways we do that is books for kids to try and teach them that. So a little one called Pippa and the Singing Tree, which is more to do with sort of the heart and imagination and just loving singing, like Keith told the story about that, tasting that food, that you sort of get it because it's lovely and beautiful and wonderful. So it sort of goes after that part of it. The We Sing is a little more instructional, and we did a book a number of years ago called Sing, that just went through some of the key ideas and what the singing diet of the church should be, and for families and individuals, and sort of it maps some of those ideas, but in rhyming form
It's still
for
playful
children.
and fun, and beautiful, very unique, creative illustrations that just make it so accessible.
So it all just sort of speaks into this idea of all of us singing together, but that lovely little emphasis, which I care so much about, is families singing and getting our kids involved in the singing voice of the church.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Well, Keith and Kristyn, thank you so much for all that you're doing,
both
on all these different fronts, your songwriting, working on this hymnal, children's books. We so appreciate what you've done for the church.
Well, thank you so much, Crossway, for all your help in this effort.
Thanks, Matt.
That was Keith and Kristyn Getty on the story behind the Sing Hymnal. To learn more about the hymnal, tap the link in the show notes or visit singhymnal.com. That's singhymnal.com. If you like this interview, check out another conversation I had with Kristyn entitled Hymns and the Joy of Singing. To listen, click the link in the show notes or search for the episode wherever you get your podcasts. For more audio content like this, subscribe to the Crossway podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing it with a friend and leaving us a review. Crossway is a not-for-profit Christian ministry that exists solely for the purpose of proclaiming the truth of God's Word through publishing gospel-centered content. Visit us today at crossway.org.